Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack here. Monday now, the first day of September 2025. Great to have you along with me, everybody. I appreciate your time and attention on this fine Monday, Labor Day 2025. So yeah, September begins. What can we expect? We do have one area to watch out there off the coast of Africa that most of the global computer models are starting to get a handle on. But I figured let's start with a little bit of climatology and show you just how busy September can be, dating all the way back to 1851, and we'll do so via this nice interactive map that our good friend Howard coded up for us, and he keeps it curated from the fine area of Bermuda out in the Atlantic, and we appreciate that because, boy, we can really see. Let's take these all away first of all. All right, so this is the first 10 days, the middle of September, the last third. Yeah. September climatologically is the busiest season, and we can notice the main development region chock full of activity. Quite a bit in the Caribbean, but more out between the islands and Africa. A lot of subtropical activity. This is to be expected with a warm Atlantic from time to time. Huge concentration, though, later in the season, relatively speaking for the geographic area anyway. That's a pretty thick concentration. That's usually related to the Central American gyre. And then the Gulf and the Bay of Campeche typically very busy, as is the southeastern Pacific. So this is what we call climatology. This is why September is normally a very busy month. Even if the rest of the season has been kind of dead, it tends to pick up once we get to September, and here we are. Don't quite have an invest area out of this just yet. And I'm recording this video at about 1:20 in the afternoon, so we don't have the 2 p.m. tropical weather outlook just yet, but I would suspect that the probabilities on this are going to go up, and eventually it will be our next invest area, as we call it, and we'll have to watch this for obvious reasons. We'll get back to this more in just a moment. In the meantime, though, I don't want to ignore the East Pac. We do have Kiko out here, and in terms of where that's heading, all the way out into the open Pacific, not going to threaten anybody except any shipping interest out that way. Then we have another area here, 60% and 80% tropical wave, and it's interesting that this is not, at least it doesn't indicate it here, this is not an invest area either. Now this feature could get much closer to the coast up here of Mexico and maybe bring some impacts if it's even closer. And maybe, just maybe, this gets some moisture up into the southwest where you guys can always use that. I don't want to say it can never be too wet out there because we know it can be and that leads to flooding, but you can take all the moisture you can get right now, right? All right, so let's start from the Pacific and West Atlantic shot satellite animation-wise today. There is our tropical storm Kiko. This is the next area that's trying to come together. A little cluster of showers and thunderstorms in the extreme southwestern Caribbean Sea. And this is a curious little surface low sitting here straddling the coast of Florida. We'll take a look at that from different perspectives in just a moment. Not going to ignore that feature. After all, Labor Day weekend, a lot of people out at the beach. This is probably impacting you in some form or another. Different perspective of it. There it is there. And again, we'll address this more in just a moment. Central Atlantic and elsewhere, nice and calm right now, but it is this feature that we're going to be watching closely. A gathering of energy, tropical wave, the intertropical convergence zone sitting down here, sort of the monsoon trough out there, and our ever-present dry, stable, and occasionally dusty air. And all of that is part of the overall, big picture. Maybe it's dry and dusty in here. Now look, a different way to perceive everything and look at it is through the vorticity signature. And there is a piece of energy sitting down here. Got this stalled boundary, and anytime you have a boundary, it is, say it with me at home, a focusing mechanism. A boundary is exactly that. It's typically where an area of air is coming together. Convergence and vorticity, or some spin in the atmosphere. And sometimes you get the tail end of these fronts hang around long enough over very warm water and something could spin up. We do have a weak low pressure down there, again straddling the coast of Florida, pretty much on land as it were, even this hour, but that's about it. Not really much chance of it developing further, but you just never know if these systems hang around long enough. I believe it was Diana way back in 1984 that got its start from an old frontal boundary. I think Bob in 1991 was the same. So yes, we do have to monitor those systems, right? Down in the Caribbean and elsewhere, free and clear of any areas of energy. And those are the signs we look for, by the way, these pieces of vorticity, especially when they kind of pinch off and they are by themselves. Right now it's kind of linear, attached to the boundary part of the front there. So again, we'll watch it, but not too concerned about it. And off the picture is our other area. We'll wait for a couple of days for this to slide into this particular vantage point, that piece of energy off the coast of Africa. And we'll look at all that too in the modeling coming up. Now, our sea surface temperature anomalies. I always like to visit this because it is certainly part of the overall puzzle when we are looking for activity. And I think the big glaring thing that stands out to me is this darn near La Nina pattern that we have in the tropical Pacific. Strong trade winds blowing across from east to west over here, helping to stir that water up and upwell colder water from beneath. And I mean, if it weren't for guidelines from the Climate Prediction Center about how long these anomalies are in place and all that stuff and how the atmosphere reacts, just looking at that, if you just showed that image to somebody like 10 years from now and said, what do you think was happening there, with no other information, they would say, oh, that looks like a La Nina. Again, it's all about classification and meeting certain criteria in terms of official La Nina or not. But boy, oh boy, that cold Pacific relative to average is certainly a red flag, even though it's blue, because all of this colder water relative to average will help to reduce the wind shear here as we progress through the next month or two. And that is going to play a key role in what happens throughout this region between now and the end of October. This has a connection to this. It absolutely does. All right? Meanwhile, out in the deep tropics, fairly warm relative to average through this area. Most of this is 1 degree Celsius. Warmer than average. There's the cold wake left over from our recent activity from Erin and Fernan. And we'll have another system more than likely that's going to develop out here somewhere. And we might as well get to that right now, shall we? We shall. So here it is on the GFS. This is the global forecast. Let's use a better color, maybe this blue. There we go. This is the GFS Global Forecast System operational model down at the 5,000 foot level, 850 millibars. And we're looking at that vorticity. And again, just to kind of point this out to you, it's so neat to explain meteorology. This is where it's all stretched out. So the energy is definitely not bundled there. It's stretched out like cotton candy, not focused, not bundled. Here's some energy coming off Africa, and the overall pouch of moisture and relative vorticity sitting out there. Pretty good environment overall. We can switch this just real quick, look at a few things that are also of interest. Yep, all that deep green in there, pretty high relative humidities in the mid-level part of the atmosphere, but there's a large area of high pressure lurking to the north, scouring the northwest coast of Africa, bringing down that dry, sandy, dusty air. However, it does look fairly favorable overall for gradual development of this piece of energy right here. And on this particular iteration, the 12Z run, I'll highlight that for you right there, 12Z run today, the GFS is kind of slow with it. And honestly, it doesn't do too much over the next week. You can see it tries to curl it up here southwest of the Cabo Verdes at about hour 54 or so. And then, similar to what it did with Erin, it kind of bumps off to the northwest. Maybe inexplicably, like, why does it do that? I don't know. You know, ask the model, right? This is day 5, and then you have day 6, and then finally day 7. Fully formed, albeit probably kind of weak, tropical cyclone, day 7. Sitting out in the open central Atlantic, not bothering anybody except the flying fish. I always think it's funny when people say they're fish storms. Well, I guess if they are flying fish or whales that breach the surface or whatever, but whatever, I'm just being nitpicky. That is another piece of energy coming off. This is around September the 8th. So let's see, how do the other models stack up? Do they agree? Let's move over to our friend, the Canadian model. It too has this piece of energy sitting out here. Also a pretty good representation of that vorticity in and around the Daytona Beach area of Florida for what it's worth. Let's move this out to the next week and see what it shows. It's also got somewhat of that northwest turn, but not quite as pronounced. And by hour 168, there it is. Fairly well developed tropical cyclone, almost due south of that ridge axis there, at least in the vertical, or longitudinally anyway. And that's pretty impressive. And I think that's more believable than what the GFS is doing. Every once in a while, the GFS will throw these weird curveballs out, and you just get these odd, things that go on with it. So let's match all these up, by the way. So there's 168 on the GFS. There it is on the Canadian. What about our friend the Euro? This is from the 6Z run. We'll run this out to 6 days. That's as far as it'll go on this particular site and whatever. And it's pretty similar to the Canadian, albeit a little bit weaker, but definitely different than the GFS. You can see that. So that's what's really cool about this, is you can compare the different models, and you can sit here and do this for an hour. What does this show? What does that show? What are the different height fields? What are the anomalies? But I like to look right down near the surface, that 5,000 foot level, that 850 millibar area, to see how the structure is and what's the progression of it. Is it consistent? And the one thing that is consistent is all three of these major global models do show something developing out in the main development region, which is certainly important because I showed you this earlier, right about in this area. It makes sense. Okay, something probably will develop out there because climatologically it would be expected. So there it is on the GFS, the Canadian, and the Euro, and we'll see what happens in the coming days. Obviously, nothing to be concerned about. You can run these models all the way out to as long as they go. The GFS goes to, 16 days or whatever it is. But anything past about day 5, you know the drill. It's just starting to become noise and chaos and randomness and whatever. There's really not much value in looking beyond 5 days. So that's why I show you out to about a week. Part of that is because the Hurricane Center outlooks here go to 168 hours. Hey, look at that. They updated it while I was chatting. Hey, how about that? They mailed it in early. Well, actually, I've been going long. Well, it's 1:30, so it's Labor Day. It's all right. We'll give them a break. I'm just kidding. They don't mail anything in. There's somebody sitting down there. In fact, who wrote it? Let's see who. Hey, it's my friend Jack Bevan. He's sitting down there at the console, firing up the tropical weather outlook, now 10 and 50%, which goes very nicely with what I just showed you. So there you go. All right. Before I show you the last tab up there, because I am starting something new today, not a big deal, but it is something fresh, something new that I will show most updates as we go forward. But to sum this all up, it's September, got a long way to go, got some activity to watch in the eastern Atlantic. As we move through the coming weeks, we are expecting a more favorable setup via the MJO and the occasional passing Kelvin wave, as we call it. All just fancy ways of saying, you bet, it's absolutely the peak of hurricane season, and we should expect a gradual ramping up in activity, and we just got to be ready. And that's part of what I do here, is to inform you so that you can be ready. All right, now for the new feature. Way back in 2004, we had quite the hurricane season, as you might recall, and shortly after that season was over, I began working on my first long format, and it is an hour and 54 minutes. It's like a major motion picture, isn't it? Like a feature film. My first documentary. I edited it on an old Mac, Power Mac G3, using a software package called Edit DV. Narrated it, did the music, everything all myself, culminating everything that we tackled in the 2004 season. Myself, John, Jesse, and Eddie, and others, different people we encountered. A lot of you have already seen this, but in case you haven't, this is the new feature. I'm going to show you, at the end of all of my updates, a video, a documentary or whatever, something that I think you might be interested in. I'm not going to go chronologically where tomorrow would be like the '05 season. They'll be random. But today, I did want to start at the very beginning of the very first documentary I ever put out there. And this one is the whole thing. I think there's like chunks of it that were out there because in the early days of YouTube, you couldn't upload 2 hours, whatever. And in 2017, I think that's when I uploaded this, you could. So anyway, the whole movie is sitting there. I'll put a link to it in today's description, as I will do with every little featured video that I show you. Most of them are going to be these documentaries that I've produced. There's a bunch of them out there now. Some of them might be replays of something from the past, just something, like I said, that I think you might be interested in. So, hopefully you are. And if you haven't seen this, you're in for a real treat. And they are all freely available to share with whomever you choose. All right? So Tracking the Hurricanes 2004, the first of our new featured video segment to end these Outlook and discussion videos for you. All right? And again, I'll put the link to that in today's description. So that's it. Got something to watch out there. Now up to 10%, 48 hours, 50% over the next 7 days. And indeed, September begins, giving us something to watch over the coming days. Have a good rest of your Monday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a piece of your attention. I appreciate it very much. From all of us at the HurricaneTrack team and our nice little family we got here, we appreciate you tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll see you again tomorrow.